And I think we are live. Hello, Nadim.
Hello, Katie. Good to meet you. Good to see you again, rather.
See you again. So, hi, everyone. I think that we're live. So, hello, everyone. Just to make a quick introduction to myself, I'm Katy Fridman, and I am the founder of Flexible Working People. And I'm really thrilled to be joined tonight by Nadim Saad, who we have on screen alongside me, who is the founder of the Happy Confident Company. So tonight's a little bit different to usual because we are streaming live both into the Flexible Working People group and the Happy Confident Company page. So if you are watching from either platform, can you just drop a comment in the comment box and say hi, just let me know that you can see and hear us. And it'd be good to know where you're watching from, which community. So drop a comment in to let us know that you're there and we're not talking to ourselves. So tonight's Facebook Live, it's all about supporting parents and our children with their mental health and well-being. We've just finished, or we're at the tail end now of Children's Mental Health Week. And we all know that this is an ongoing challenge. The past year's put masses of pressure on everybody, but enormous pressure on parents and children as we sort of coexist in these blended environments with our usual routines thrown out the window. We haven't got our usual outlets of friends and seeing family and work and going to work and children going to school. So for most of us parents, we are existing in a world where our children are in our workplace and we're in their schools and we're with them 24 hours a day. And even though we're with them all the time, somehow we feel less connected than we've ever felt before. Which is why I'm really thrilled to have Nadim here join us. Nadim is an expert parenting coach. He is the author of 7 books. Nadim, I don't know where you found the time to write 7 books. And highly acclaimed, one of them is Kids Don't Come With a Manual, which I've read. And he's also the founder of the Happy Confident Company and a dad to 3 girls. So tonight, Nadim's going to give us some strategies for how to support our children and manage the overwhelm. So in the last year, Nadim, I know that you've been really busy. You've launched a now best-selling daily journal for kids, a series of educational games that are being used in schools and by therapists and thousands of families. I thought it might be useful just to start by telling us sort of a little bit more about you and how your journey began.
Thank you, Katie. So I'll keep this brief. And I actually became a parenting coach 8 years ago because of my needs as a parent and because I disagreed with my wife on how to parent. And actually pretty normal because for all of you out there, research shows that 75% of parents disagree on how to parent, and more than 50% of these disagreements are on how to discipline kids. So it's pretty normal, but very challenging. And so we decided to try and do different things, and we become much more balanced, and we decided to write books about this. With time, I actually realized when my middle one turned 8, she went through a tough phase, and she was like the really bubbly, super happy child. And suddenly she went through a phase of being quite difficult, mean to her sisters, not, misbehaving a lot. And we just couldn't understand. It was complete transformation. And so thankfully, we have the tools. And so we had the really deep conversation, and she ended up admitting that she hated herself. And so when as a parenting coach, when you have your kid tell, I hate myself, you just think, oh, wow. So we were trying hard to do everything we could. And better than average, hopefully, because of all the knowledge we had. And we still managed to have a really bubbly kid, super happy, going through this phase. And that's was a huge aha moment for me. I thought, well, I was actually super lucky because I have the tools to go deeper, to understand what my child's feeling. But I could have easily, which was actually what had started happening, is you expect this behavior from this super, usually quite well-behaved child and super happy. And so you go into what we call a negative cycle. And so you're just and you start punishing or applying consequences, even though, so we don't believe in punishment, but it was like consequences, making sure that, that she knew that it wasn't okay. And it would only make it worse. She would feel even worse as a bad person. She really literally thought she was a bad person. And wow, I thought, wow, we're so lucky because we had the possibility of our child talking to us and being able to have this, get this from her. But in most cases, a lot of parents would have gone into this negative cycle. And that's where I realized, wow, so after all these years of parenting, trying to teach parents how to be better parents, it's so important to also work with children. And that's how I launched the Happy Confident Company, thinking actually we all need support tools. We all need to, how do we get our children to share with us what they're feeling, what's on their mind, what challenges they went through, or what they like, what they love.
Yeah.
And that's the tools we've started creating. So the journals, so gratitude in the evening, a lot of questions about how you're feeling, how the different ways you felt today. We've got our feeling cards that are all about understanding, so understanding feelings and increasing our emotional literacy and vocabulary. And we've got affirmation cards. So basically it's all, and we're coming up with conversation tools as well. So it's our conversation cards. So how do you engage in a conversation with your child? Well, here's a fun way to do it, a game where they totally engage rather than, oh, how did you feel today? Or, you know, even me as a parenting coach and with all this great relationship I have with my kids, they don't answer. They're just like, oh, again, you're asking me. But if they have a game and they're actually looking at different cards, and so, you know, they can tell me, you know, oh, I felt anxious today, or I felt guilty, or hopefully, you know, I felt safe.
Yeah.
And so it's
Okay.
this kind of thing, that gamification and learning through play is what we're trying to achieve. So that's how, you know, I came into this. And then
That's amazing. So it's a really incredible story to tell, and something so personal to you that led you into this. And we're going to talk more about that, because I think that the tools that we as parents have, and I said to you just before we jumped on, like I don't even know how to talk to my kids. So I know that I can talk to them about normal things. I can say, how are you feeling? But then what? Like, so these tools are the things that I'd love you to share with us. But before we do, I just wanted to say, we've had some brilliant questions that have been sent in that I'm going to put to Nadim. But if anyone's got like your top number one parenting struggle that you want to chuck over and get Nadim to talk about tonight, pop it in the box. And if we've got time, we'll cover it off at the end. So what's your number one parenting struggle? Type it out and we'd love to see. And if we can't cover it now, we'll come back to it. So we're going to come back to tools, but I want to start by one of the questions, because there's been a theme with the questions that have been asked for us to cover tonight. And one of the main ones is this whole juggle of work and school, and just how much parents are feeling so overwhelmed, and our agitation levels are going through the roof. And so we're ending up with frustration and anger and like just this general guilt and feeling like we're not doing particularly well at anything at the moment. So I wanted to just start with that and maybe get a little bit of your thoughts on, you know, what can we do better as parents to sort of stay calm and cope better with what's going on at the moment?
Wow, that's a great question. That could be half an hour in itself. Let's
I know, but you got 3 seconds.
Yes, exactly. So let me try
Go.
so the first important part is actually to realize where we are and I have a strong belief, and a lot of research shows that we do our best in every moment. We do our best with the knowledge we have, the training we have, and our level of energy. And so once we start from this place of compassion for ourselves and for children, then so acceptance is the first state of, so we're not doing things great and it's totally fine. And why it's fine is actually particularly because we've never been in a situation like this. And if you look at the research, realize that all of this, so it's like this sense of danger that's around us actually takes a lot of our cognitive ability. So it's actually our brain is working. There's first the radar for danger is full on, which creates hormones in our body, anxiety hormones and things like that. So we're actually less capable of thinking and of focusing. So this is both actually valid for us and our kids. So when we start first with compassion, realizing, you know what, it's normal if we're not on top of our game, it makes it easier to feel less guilty. And that's really important, because guilt is an important feeling, but it's important to actually convert it, to shift it to motivation. The opposite of guilt is motivation. So the interest of guilt is to use it to then shift it to motivation. But if we stay in the guilt, it's actually often brings a lot of anger, overwhelm. And so you mentioned overwhelm, and that's a really important aspect. So we feel overwhelmed, and it's totally normal because of that, because we're suppressing these feelings of dangers and of having just too much on our plate. So, and if when we look at, actually, I did this experience both with adults and children. When you ask them, so what are you feeling? And they say overwhelm, the first thing that comes is overwhelm. It's like, okay, but try and get, this is a secondary feeling, trying to get to your primary feeling. And then they come up with like 20 unpleasant feelings, you know, sadness, hopelessness, powerlessness, you know, all the frustration. And you're just like, okay, well then now try and reduce it. So that's the first, like what's really a tool is try and reduce this overwhelm to less feelings, a maximum of 3. Because this way, as you do this, you actually start feeling more in control of where you are and of your feelings. And you just think, oh, okay, that's kind of the 2 or 3 feelings that are really, and often is powerlessness, for example. And, you know, and that's where then you think, okay, but how do I want to feel? And you start already starting to shift it, and you start finding strategies. When it's not just I'm overwhelmed and you just look at the 2 or 3 feelings, you can already shift it. Another really good hack is, obviously we talk a lot about meditation and how important it is in these moments, because to calm down our system. I'm going to give you a tool that's a breathing tool that actually is a hack. It's to actually reduce your overwhelm, and it's to reset your vagus nerve. I don't know if you've probably heard of the vagus nerve. It's this nerve that connects our brain to our gut, and it's a really important one, and particularly women know it very well, because it's when we have a gut instinct, you know, it's actually basically our gut, our vagus nerve transferring information from our gut, which is our second brain, to the main brain through the vagus nerve. And it's this emotion that actually we feel, we know what it is. And so when this is an overwhelm, we're not actually really feeling and knowing what to do. So it's so important to reset the vagus nerve. So let's do it all together. If you can just, and that's actually a tool that a great therapist and yoga teacher called Carolyn Cohen teaches in her Kundalini classes. And it just takes like 20 seconds. So
should we all do this together quickly?
Yeah, let's do it together quickly, because I want you to feel this, because then you're going to be actually more able to focus during this whole session too. So put your hands together, cross your fingers, and take your index finger together.
Got it.
You're going to pull it up and look at your fingers and put it up as high as you can. Now you're going to breathe in, and you're going to turn to one side. Breathe in. Turn, for example, to the left. Keep your breath in. Just look at your fingers, and then breathe out, come back to center. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. So
I hope you're all doing this. Yes.
Yes, do this. Really worth it. Breathe in. Turn to the right or to the other side. Keep your breath in. Look at your finger, and then breathe out while you come back. And if you feel the endorphins,
feel something. Yes, I can feel it sort of flooding to my head and feeling.
Well, that's a great vagus nerve reset. And so when you're feeling overwhelmed, you can do this as many times. Well, so you can do it 2 or 3 times in one go, and it just completely reset your system. And you can do this, you know, every hour, every 2 hours, whenever you feel overwhelmed or you're angry. So that's really an important one. So that's kind of a hack for overwhelm. Now, so it's acceptance first. Then, so when I talked about naming feelings, it's actually based on science. Dan Siegel, a famous neuroscientist, actually coined this as name it to tame it. When you name your feeling, or you're feeling overwhelmed and you're not sure what you feel, when you actually name a more specific feeling, you connect your right brain where the feeling's happening with the left brain because of the language, and automatically it reduces the intensity of the feeling. So first, acceptance. Second, name it to tame it. And third, find a hack like what I just showed you to reduce the overwhelm. And we'll talk about other strategies to really, like, because obviously, I mean, and let's look at anger too. Anger is also a secondary feeling. Often, well, it can be a primary feeling if it's because you feel something's not right or fair, and it's a boundary that someone's crossed. You feel angry as a primary feeling. But when you're angry, often, particularly in this moment of overwhelm, we're angry because we have fear, guilt, or power, or feel powerless. Particularly powerless at the moment is a big one. And so it's identifying that this anger is accepted, because it's okay to be angry because we're feeling so powerless, because then it allows us to reduce the intensity, to identify it before it becomes too much and before we become overwhelmed by it. And so the final thing I want to finish on is a great tool for anger and overwhelm when we are with our kids and we've just had enough, and suddenly we're finding ourselves really shouting or doing something we realize is not very helpful, because and I actually, that was my biggest learning as a parent, and that's why I started being a parenting coach, is I learned that when I tell my children, stop crying or stop shouting. And, actually, I can trigger you by just saying, I don't want to trigger you after actually having reset the vagus nerve, because I tell you, stop crying. I triggered you, didn't you? Can you feel your whole system's gone up? Yeah, their heart gets, and that's what happens to our children too. So suddenly they go into fight or flight, release anxiety hormone, and they can't even do what we're asking them to do. So it's like totally counterproductive. So if you find yourself doing something like you're like, oh my God, for example, my children would freeze as soon as I would raise my voice. Then you can use this amazing tool called rewind. So as you're finding yourself going
after you've shouted or before.
Yeah, well, much better if you've stopped yourself before, but unfortunately we're still learning, aren't we? So let's say we have started shouting, and suddenly you go rewind, and then you've got your kids going from fight or flight, freeze, cortisol, to, oh, what's happening? And then you still stay, clear boundaries, but you're saying it with a much more respectful voice. You're like, okay, that was really important. As you can see, I'm getting really angry because of this, that. I really needed to do this. I can assure you that your kids are just going to be.
Yeah, because they're not expecting that. Because they're expecting the shout. Yeah.
Exactly. And what used to happen, so rewind, so acceptance, name it to tame it, little hack of, breathing hacks, and remember rewind, so that when you're making
name it to tame it. Love this. Okay.
And when you're making a mistake, you're modeling, I want to finish on that, you're modeling the best thing to your children. You can make mistakes, but you can catch yourself and you can do it differently.
Rewind.
And that's where then, particularly with teens, because what are you going to do with teens who are disrespecting you and all? How many times are you going to shout at them and lecture them that they shouldn't be talking to you like this or whatever? Well, much better to say, that's not okay. You may want to rewind. So actually, because you showed them that you can rewind, they're also allowed to make mistakes and to rewind. So it doesn't go into a battle of wills with, lose-lose. You're actually both looking to stay connection, because the whole thing is connection before correction. And I'll stop there because, as you can see,
otherwise we could talk half an hour. So let's move on. So great to see that someone has already said that the vagus nerve hack has worked for them. It's made their head feel super open. It's actually really worked for me too. So you've got to find me most days sort of doing this and breathing and turning.
Good.
So let's move on. So one of the other questions that we're asked is, sometimes it's hard to tell if our children are struggling. So what are the red flags? What are the signs that we should look out for? And also, how can we get our kids to talk to us about how they're feeling?
Wow. Yes, that's a big one.
Another big question.
Obviously, it's a big question. And obviously, we all know we have different kids. They have different ways of communicating. They have different. So obviously, you're the ones who know your kids, and I don't want it to seem too basic, but it's identifying how different they are to
different behaviors.
And some might actually not have different behavior, but feeling the anxiety and not sharing it. But the majority will show signs, and the signs can be more misbehavior, more anger, and this is where instead of what we tend to do, obviously, thankfully, there are more aware parents, more mindful, but a lot of us, including me, will tend to just want to reassure our children, or to tell them, oh, it's going to be okay, or hey, don't get angry. We're in reassuring mode, because we're not comfortable with unpleasant feelings. We're rarely comfortable with our unpleasant feelings. Therefore, we're not comfortable with their unpleasant feelings. What's really important is go back to acceptance that it's normal for everyone to feel, not only us, but our kids. So we name it to tame it too. We help them name it. We help them put a name to it, like expand their emotional vocabulary, so that they realize that, oh, I'm actually feeling these things, so that it makes it a lot easier for them to obviously share.
So just take a step back, Nadim. So what would you do if you were noticing this behavior with your children? What would you say? How are you feeling? I've noticed you're behaving differently. Like, what's the trigger that's going to get?
Good. So when, if, for example, in the heat of the moment, if something's happening, or it can be anger, like, oh, I see you're feeling super angry or frustrated. So you name it, or wow, that you behave slightly differently. Are you worried about something? So you try and name, and you don't always get it right. So you're venturing. You're asking permission to actually, and then they can hopefully share more. You can also. So the best time to have these conversations is usually in the evening, when you're putting them to bed. Even with teens, I actually, that's the time where everything's coming down, and actually you can connect the best. And you can ask them, oh, what are the different ways you felt today? Or what are the best moments of the day? Or did you have any challenges today? Or did you, it's asking these questions that will hopefully help them share. So for example, in our journals, the key questions are usually, what are the different ways you felt today? What are your top 3 things for the day? Because the gratitude, all the research on journaling and gratitude shows that it makes people a lot happier, because before going to sleep, you're just thinking of the good things that happened rather than the things that made you anxious. And then we usually go, is there anything that you were proud of today? Or what were your strongest feelings of the day? Or, you can vary the questions every day, try and vary. And that's where you get your children to open up and to share things that, usually, so it's a really important time of the day. And and that's where you can get some like gold nuggets, like some really, really great moments of sharing and connection. And often if you, for example, I would advise, very importantly, if you did get really angry during the day, something, went wrong, that's the best time to say, hey, I'm really sorry about what happened today. Let's try and find something to do. What can we do differently tomorrow so that it doesn't happen again? And that's the moment of connection, of admitting and accepting a mistake and saying sorry, so that you're modeling to your children that they also can be sorry and you can do things better.
Lovely, love that. So let's say that they say to you, okay, Mummy, I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling sad or lonely, or any other things that they might be feeling. And we're in a situation at the moment where you can't say, well, let's go here, or we'll do this, or we'll change it up, because we're all sitting in the house, and you can't make it all better in a way that you can, like in a normal world. There are things that you might be able to do and distract. So what kind of strategies or tips or ways that we can handle a child that says, I'm just really angry and I'm frustrated and I'm just feel lonely and I miss my friends, and like all this stuff that we're hearing? What do we say? I know, it's really
the $1 million question. Yes,
it's rubbish, isn't it? We all agree. We're all missing our friends.
So the reality is acceptance and actually acknowledging, rather than just reassuring bluntly and say, oh, it's going to be okay, don't worry, is like admitting that we're all feeling, rubbish is helpful. Because otherwise, if we don't, they will feel that it's not okay to feel this way. And then that's where they start feeling that they're not okay. And then it creates more anxiety and more anxiety. And so actually telling them, you know what, in these moments, it's normal. Our whole system is looking for danger. And so that's why maybe sometimes you can't concentrate so much, etc. So basically, but then helping them to name their feelings so they feel more in control of this is the key. Because so once you acknowledge, it's not accepting a behavior or accepting, that it's not wallowing in their feelings. It's you're naming it, you're taming it, and then you look at with them at strategies of what could make them feel better. And you engage them in the strategies rather than immediately give them ideas. Oh, maybe you could do this to feel better. Try and help them find solutions. So what can you do about this? Rather than, do this or that, and that could help you. What can you do about it?
So you think they should come up with the strategies? They should come up with actually, if I did this, it would make me feel better, whether that's like...
And the kids who don't, absolutely. And the kids who don't have ideas, because obviously, particularly if they've not practiced this before, they're just going to go, I don't know. And that's where you ask permission, which is amazing. You're like, oh, would you like to know? Would you like me to give you ideas? Automatically, they're in listening mode rather than in the, oh, I've had enough of hearing you. Or it's like, oh yeah, actually, you'd be surprised. Kids who are very resistant suddenly open up because you've asked them permission. And that's where you try and give them 2 or 3 solutions, not one, because if you give them one, often, particularly younger children, will jump on the first. So it's important to give them 2 or 3 alternatives. So then they feel that so what would work for you? And they choose 1 or 2 that works for them. And then they're empowered. And then they really will apply it because they feel it was their decision. So you empower them to do, and you help them find strategies. Obviously, sometimes it's okay to tell them, actually, I'm not sure what you can do. Let me think about it. And let's think about it and come back to it tomorrow. And then you go, and you're like, wow. So it's not, I'm not saying that parenting is easy and suddenly you have, but once you have this communication, this connection going, wow, the level of creativity that comes from our children and ideas and them feeling more in control, that actually I can do something. Oh my God, I managed to shift my feeling yesterday. I was like overwhelmed. I was angry. And actually in 5 seconds, they can shift their feelings a lot faster than us. So help them realize this, and you'd be surprised at how fast it can go, and everything becomes basically this virtuous circle rather than the vicious circle of, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, I'm not okay, I'm a bad person.
And what about the children's ages? So my kids are 7 and 9, and they can't articulate how they feel very well. So I find that really hard. So I just say, "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay," or "No, I'm not okay." And then teenagers like might just not want to talk at all and completely like isolate and switch off. So I think it depends, doesn't it, on the strategy's got to depend on the age of your kids and how you. So what's your advice there?
Totally, and that's where you connect at their level, which is the most important thing. So I don't want to plug this, but actually that's because I can't even get my kids to tell me how they feel while they know.
I want you to show this because I think it's really powerful. Yeah.
So
there you go. This is not an ad, but this is a strategy.
It is just when we feel overwhelmed, as we said, and we understand with a definition of overwhelmed. And basically, we ask I ask my children how they're feeling. So they have I'm feeling, and they have how I want to feel. So once they identify what they're feeling, and we try and, as I explained, restrict it to 3, and then we go to I want to feel, and then they come, I want to feel motivated, I want to feel happy, I want to feel. Just by doing this, it completely shifts it. So, and because it's a game and there's guess it and act it. So, for example, we play. I mean, there are children right now who just wanted to play feel it every day. Because it's about, for example, acting our feelings. So I'm going to act embarrassed, or I'm going to act, excited, or
my kids would love this.
It gives them the emotional vocabulary and the fact that actually everyone, it's totally okay to share the feelings, and we understand the feelings. Therefore, you get into this. So you're right, it depends on the ages, but you have to get them used to it. From age 3-4, you can start with very simple feelings. So at age 3-4, you start with anger, fear, happy, and anxious and worried. And with time, you just introduce different new feelings, and they might not know exactly, but that's where you venture. You suggest things. And as long as you're asking permission and they're not feeling that you're putting something in their head, they open up. So fantastic. Hopefully it's it doesn't change from actually with a pack of feel it could change from one day to another. But even without support, if you ask questions, gradually they open up and they start getting more used to this, and it's really important. And I've come from what I call the dark side. Basically, I didn't feel anything. My parents told me so much that, it's not okay that I feel so. I mean, because I went through the war actually in Lebanon, and they didn't want me to feel anxious, or whatever. But so I completely shut off my feelings. It took me until I was 40 to actually start reconnecting my feelings. So much better if we do it early on.
Okay, I agree. Okay, so I think another thing that's coming through a lot is this the screens and the screen time. So every parent I talk to feels guilty about the amount of time their kids are staying on screens. And one of the questions that's come up a lot is, how do we deal with this? So, but what's interesting is that, on the one hand, they can't go out and talk to their friends and meet them and be social. So the only way that we interact is through Zoom and screens and screen time. So so when you tell your kids, don't be on screens, but actually gaming and screen time is the only thing that they can have socially contact with their friends, is it fair to limit it? And how do we define the boundaries if that's all they can do that's social?
The $1 million question.
Or should we just give it up and go? I just say we're in lockdown. Who cares? Get online. It's fine. Just get on with it.
I've been laughing since you started the question because my kids are all on screens right now because it's the only way for me to be able to have this conversation with you. So
fantastic.
Yes, I mean, they could be reading. It's true, but usually Sunday afternoon, evening, we watch a movie together. So this time they have the permission to watch it on their own. So it is if there's one thing, because I see some positives in COVID, of the opportunities we have to connect with our children and but the really negative one is clearly that screens are essential. And when I see the amount of time we all spend, And there are now people like children who are having more problems with their eyes. They're reporting like increases significant. Okay, anyway, I don't want to, it's not all doom and gloom, but it is, you're right to say, and it is more, we have to make it very clear, and children understand exceptions. So it's important that we explain that this is a period where we're going to accept this, so that they don't get used to it and think that it's always going to be okay from now, like this from now on. And so what I advise to do, and it will probably use it for other, I mean, if there are other questions, I think that we're preempting a lot, is actually from age 4, the best tool you have to address these kind of things, including sibling squabbles, including basically most challenges we have as parents, is to do family meetings. And particularly in these times of lockdown, family meetings is probably for me by far the #1 tool. It's something you try and do once a week. And that's where you try and address the problem, the needs of all the family. So you've got needs, for example, your children are not listening to you. You've got to shout for them to, acknowledge you. Or they may have needs. For example, oh, my brother is hitting me all the time. My sister doing this, and so they love sharing their needs when you finally give them the opportunity, not in the moment of, yeah, he's done this, she's done that, but in a moment where we're all actually connecting as a family. And ideally, you start with the positive. So, for example, you start with compliments and gratitude. So everyone in the family expresses gratitude towards each other and compliments. For example, oh, I noticed, you did your homework today or this week without me asking, or your piano practice, whatever they're doing that so you acknowledge them and they feel really good about it. And then you go into, so, okay, let's share our needs as a family. Who has a need? And at the beginning, the first time you do it, you probably don't even know what you mean. So you give an example. Oh, for example, I'd like you, I'd really like to be listened to. I don't want to have to raise my voice for you to do things, because obviously we get disconnected. And they actually understand, because when we're outside of that, they don't want it to, they want connection too. They want, these feelings. The most important things for all of us is oxytocin at the moment. It's replaced these anxiety hormones, etc., for more, positive hormones. Dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins. So, for example, that's why we should all, do exercise, and our kids as well. And so I recommend our Be Happy board game, for example, where you do exercise while having fun with a family. So to replace these hormones, and actually we're going to send you a dopamine hack, so which is similar to the vagus nerve reset, but it's more about releasing dopamine. And actually your kids can do it too, because when they do it, they'll feel better about it, and they will funnily enough, they will need less screens. Because what we're looking for in a lot of screens and the gaming, etc., is this constant dopamine release. We get used and hooked to dopamine. So it's really important to try and replace this with, connection, oxytocin, games, so time together as a family. So, they want to be on their screen, and it's very difficult to get them to, let's spend some time together and play a game, for example. So obviously let's try and find the games that they all like. But it is, when you replace this with oxytocin and dopamine, so for example, dopamine hack that I will send you, Carolyn Cohen does it in one of her videos, you get less children who are, actually are less addicted, because what addicts them is this wanting the good feel hormones, basically.
But to be fair, also, just to cut in there, to be fair, I think what you're saying is like right and proven, because in my house, for example, they love their screens, my kids, they could stay on them all day. But they'd much rather be playing a game with me. And if I'd say, let's play a game or let's go outside, that's because they're 7 and 9. I know as they become teenagers, that won't be the case. There'll be plenty of people on here saying, I can't drag mine off. But at a younger age, if you actually want to engage, they will. It's kind of, for me, it's often used as a bit of a lazy tool, which is just going on screens because it gives me the time it is for me to work or for me to have time on my own. So just about finding that balance. And I've given up with guilt this lockdown. I've just given up. I'm like, I'm not guilty about it. It is what it is. Like, we are
absolutely right. And so just to finish on, so obviously I talked about release of dopamine, etc. And what I meant with family meetings is that's where you set the rules.
Yeah.
And that's where you go. And actually they're much more reasonable in these times. Like, okay, let's agree on how many. So one, how long you can spend on screens a day, particularly over the weekend, because obviously they don't have, for the lucky ones, actually you have online schooling, because some don't even have. But that's where they often spend too much time. So what's important is to agree as a family what's reasonable for you, and give them ideas of, so when the screen time is over, how would you like to be reminded? This is a crucial one, because once our kids actually agree on how they would like to be reminded, instead of going into a battle of wills of, no, I don't want to stop. If you remind them in the way they, for example, it could be a fun thing. You try and find something funny that we all agree on. Then they go from this, it's unfair, I don't want this, to actually, I decided this. Okay, I'll shut off my screen. So what's important about family meetings is because we all expressed our needs and we all agreed, children can be incredibly resourceful in ideas of how to do things, and also reasonable when we give them the opportunity to do that, to be more responsible. So that's what we want to achieve, so that it's not like a constant battle, but it's okay, we agreed. So outside of confinement, what I used to advise is, for example, a lot of parents tried it, is give them vouchers for half an hour of screen time. Here's my voucher. I do half an hour, and then I know that it's over. So you've got time, sets of time, and you use them wisely, because that's what you get during the week. More difficult to do it in lockdown, but that's where you can use it after lockdown, so that you come back to something that's more normal.
These are some great strategies. So I had another question here, but I'm actually going to go to a question, Dean, because we're running out of time. This is This has flown by, suddenly 9:10. We're running over slightly. I'm going to give us another 10 minutes or so. But I want to ask this question that Fiona's put into the chat box. So she says, my son is always anxious and negative. I've bought the journal and the Feel It cards that have helped, but he's still very insecure about things that could go bad and hurt him. He has this fear almost every day. How can I help him more?
Wow. Well, thanks for using our, obviously, the tools and the fact that they're helpful. Well, obviously, your child sounds like he or she, it was a she, no? Because it was cutting a little bit.
My son is always anxious. My son, yes.
And so I'm going back to what we said in terms of, it's really important that to explain actually what's happening in the brain. For example, they love to know what's happening in the brain. The fact that this anxiety comes from, for example, that we are primal beings and that we have a sense of danger. We were built, our brain was built to identify if there was a tiger around, or so basically a big wild animal who's going to jump on us, so that we can react really quickly. So it's important for our kids to understand this, because then they feel more in control and realize, it's okay. I really advise, try this anxiety hack that I mentioned. You'd be surprised, actually, them starting to feel the endorphins is really important. Obviously, exercise is super important. It's try and replace these anxiety hormones with oxytocin. I'm sure you're trying, because I can see how you're as a mom, you've been trying, and you've tried Feel It and the journal, but try and replace as often as possible these hormones with more positive ones. And hopefully it can start doing the trick and help him feel more in control of this, and identify strategies. So tell him, okay, you're feeling anxious. It's okay. What do you think would make you feel more like, less anxious, happier, more safe, more calm, more centered? And as long as he comes up, it'll be a lot easier for him to do it.
Okay, so there's a lot of comments in the chat. Fiona, I hope that helped you. It's difficult to get too deep in a session like this, but I hope that helped you a little bit. Someone else has said, great idea to have a detox day. I've been trying to have a time limit for my 4 and 6-year-old on the iPad. It definitely makes a difference. Too much, and it feels like it zaps their energy and makes them a little crazy. Got lots of comments here, which is great. My daughter goes for a daily walk with her phone, good for safety, and she does connect with us all. Having a little brother help. So there's lots of comments. So we're going to go through these comments, and if we don't cover them now, because we're running out of time a little bit, Nadim will jump in and try and answer them after.
Okay. I'm having difficulty. I don't know if it's only me or if it's everyone. It might be the kids watching. I'm only hearing part of what you're saying. Is everyone okay?
I was just going through the thread. Can you hear me? I can hear you very well. I was just going through the thread. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's cutting, but I'll try and
Cutting out. All right, I'll carry on talking then, Nadim, because we're coming to the end anyway. So I'll just chat. So Nadim's given us a lot of incredible tips, tools, and strategies. I mean, it's impossible to fit everything into sort of a half an hour Facebook Live. So what we've decided to do, because we knew that this would be the case, is to launch, we're really excited because we've developed sort of a family challenge. So flexible working people in the Happy Confident Company are going to help you to reconnect and strengthen your connections in your family through our 5-day reboot, family reboot. So basically, we're going to drop a link into the thread after this. And if you want to sign up to our 5-day challenge, then you sign up, and then we're going to take you off into a closed group. And then we're going to drop in every single day different 10 minutes. It can only take 10 minutes, challenges and tips and tools and strategies for you to connect with your kids. So on day 1, it will be about self-awareness and understanding. Day 2 is positive change and growth mindset. Day 3 is kindness, empathy and appreciation. Day 4, identifying, expressing and regulating emotions. And day 5, strengthening family connections. So an incredible amount of content over the 5 days. You can dip in and out as you want. And there's also some additional stuff that we can send you for your kids. So we're really keen to do this because we feel like now is the right time. We don't just want, children's mental health to be 1 week. So, we want this to be ongoing and to help you with the tools that you need. So we're going to drop it into the thread and you can join. And also Nadim has showed you some of the tools. He's got the Feel It cards and there's the journal as well. So there's a flexible working people discount code that we're also going to drop into the comments so that if anyone does want to buy any of these tools from Happy Confident Company, there'll be a discount for you. So I'm going to take a breath. Nadim, you've been an incredible guest. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd love everybody who's listening to this now to, if you want to sign up to this 5-day challenge. Nadim can come back in anytime. I'm sure this, this can see by the comments, this has been a really successful thread and people have loved having you. So maybe we should make this a regular, Nadim.
That'd be great. Thanks you, Katie. I really enjoyed it. And there are obviously, there are a lot of things to cover and there are a lot more tools. So I hope to definitely be back and share more. It'd be a pleasure.
Amazing. So we've learned tonight, I'm going to think of these, to do this, the Vegas, what's it called? The Vegas reboot? No, I made that up completely. But
Vegas Vegas reboot. Yeah.
Okay, so that. Acceptance, name it to tame it. I made some notes here.
Rewind.
And rewind. That was, rewind. I'm going to do a lot of that. I'm probably going to shout and then rewind. They go, okay, rewind, everybody. I'm really sorry. So listen, guys, I hope that you've all got a lot of value from listening to this. I know I have. I'm going to be having a family meeting tomorrow. I'm going to call all the family members. Yes. So I hope that you all have your own family meetings and that things start to improve. And as we come out of lockdown, some of this pressure disappears and we start to enjoy life again a bit more. So thank you again, Nadim. Really lovely to have you in the group. And for anybody listening in the Happy Confident Company, nice to meet you, and hop over to Flexible Working People and come and say hello.
Thank you so much, Katie. Thanks for organizing.
Take care.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.